The bold and the beautiful has always been a world where truth rarely arrives quietly. It does not knock. It crashes through glass walls built from denial, reinvention, and carefully curated identities. In this world, secrets survive not because they are strong, but because people are desperate to believe the versions of reality that hurt them the least. That fragile illusion is precisely what shatters when Electra, with the reluctant yet unwavering help of Will, finally uncovers the truth that has been hiding in plain sight for far too long. Dylan is Luna Nozawa. Not a metaphorical transformation, not a misunderstanding shaped by rumor or paranoia, but a deliberate, calculated reinvention driven by obsession, survival, and unresolved darkness. This revelation does not simply expose a lie, it resurrects a ghost, dragging unfinished trauma back into the present and threatening to poison every relationship caught in its path. For Electra, the journey toward this truth is not fueled by curiosity or ambition, but by an unease that never fully leaves her. From the moment Dylan entered her orbit, something felt discordant, like a note slightly off-key in an otherwise convincing performance. Dylan was attentive yet evasive, emotionally expressive yet strangely hollow, capable of mirroring vulnerability, without ever fully revealing her own. What troubled Electra most was not what Dylan said, but what she avoided: certain names, certain places, certain reactions that appeared rehearsed rather than instinctive. Over time, these inconsistencies formed a pattern too deliberate to ignore. Electra's instincts, sharpened by years of navigating the emotional minefields of Los Angeles, refused to be silenced. She did not set out to expose Dylan, she set out to protect herself, and eventually, Will. Will's involvement begins from a very different place. Unlike Electra, he does not approach Dylan with suspicion, but with the complicated openness of someone who believes he has already survived his worst nightmare. The past he carries is heavy, marked by violation, manipulation, and the kind of psychological assault that leaves scars no one else can see. When Dylan enters his life, Will wants to believe that this chapter is closed, that the person who once shattered his sense of safety has been erased by time. Yet the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Subtle triggers, a certain cadence of speech, a familiar intensity in Dylan's gaze, moments when her control slips, begin to stir something deep and unsettling within him. At first, Will dismisses it as projection, the residue of trauma seeking a new shape. But denial is a luxury he can no longer afford once Electra shares her growing concerns. What binds Electra and Will together in this investigation is not romance, but trust forged in vulnerability. Their late-night conversations, heavy with unspoken fear, become the foundation for a partnership neither of them anticipated. They do not chase gossip, they follow facts. Financial records that do not add up. Medical documents that appear altered. Photographs that suggest a history Dylan claims never existed. And finally, the most damning evidence of all, biometric data that links Dylan irrevocably to Luna Nozawa, the woman whose name alone is enough to tighten Will's chest and send shockwaves through his memory. Each discovery deepens the stakes, transforming suspicion into certainty and fear into resolve. The truth, once assembled, feels too explosive to release in private. It demands a stage, and fate provides one in the form of a high-profile fashion event, a celebration of image, reinvention, and spectacle. The irony is almost cruel. In a room filled with designers, models, and power players, all performing versions of themselves polished for public consumption, the ultimate performance is about to collapse. When Electra reveals the evidence, her voice steady despite the chaos roaring inside her, time seems to fracture. Conversations halt mid-sentence. Music fades into silence. Eyes turn, first in confusion, then in disbelief, and finally in horror, toward Dylan. For Will, this moment is both vindication and devastation. Seeing Luna unmasked as Dylan does not bring relief, it brings collision. The past he worked so hard to compartmentalize surges forward with brutal clarity. He is no longer just a witness to a scandal, he is the living proof of its consequences. The realization that the person who once violated his trust and autonomy has been standing so close, wearing a new face and name, reopens wounds he believed had healed. Anger, fear, and a profound sense of betrayal twist together, leaving him momentarily unmoored. This is not just about deception, it is about consent stolen twice, once in the past, and again in the present, through lies that stripped him of informed choice. Dylan, or rather Luna, does not react with the shock one might expect. Instead, her composure fractures slowly, revealing layers of desperation beneath the carefully maintained facade. Her reinvention was not born solely from malice, but from an inability to exist as herself in a world that refused to forget her worst actions. Yet understanding motive does not equate to absolution. Luna's past is not something that can be erased by a new name or face, and her return forces everyone present to confront an uncomfortable truth: reinvention, without accountability, is just another form of manipulation. The ripple effects of Luna's exposure extend far beyond the room, reaching deeply into the fragile relationship between Will and Elektra. Trust, once shaken, does not collapse all at once, it erodes. Elektra begins to question whether her pursuit of truth has inadvertently endangered the man she cares for, whether dragging Luna into the light has done more harm than good. Will, meanwhile, struggles with conflicting emotions: gratitude for Elektra's courage, guilt for the pain her discovery has caused, and a creeping fear that anyone close to him will inevitably become collateral damage in the wars he never asked to fight. Their bond, forged in honesty, is now tested by the aftershocks of revelation. No one feels these tremors more acutely than Liam Spencer, whose history with Luna is a chapter written in scars rather than words. Luna's reappearance does not simply remind him of past mistakes. It resurrects the version of himself he has spent years trying to outgrow. The guilt of what he failed to see, the responsibility he carries for not stopping her sooner, resurfaces with crushing weight. Watching Will relive trauma, because of a danger Liam once underestimated, forces him to confront his own unresolved accountability. The past is no longer safely behind him, it is breathing, speaking, and demanding reckoning. What makes this storyline particularly devastating is that it refuses to offer simple villains or easy closure. Luna is dangerous, but she is also deeply fractured. Will is strong, but strength does not immunize him against pain. Elektra is brave, yet bravery does not protect her from unintended consequences. And Liam, ever the moral compass of his own narrative, is forced to accept that good intentions do not negate harm. Each character is trapped in a web spun from choices made long ago, proving that time alone does not heal, only truth does, and truth is rarely gentle. As the fallout continues, the central question is no longer whether Luna will face consequences, but whether those she harmed can reclaim agency over their own stories. Will must decide whether confronting his past publicly empowers him, or leaves him exposed. Elektra must navigate the thin line between protector and partner, learning that love does not mean shielding someone from pain, but standing beside them as they endure it. Liam must reckon with the fact that redemption is not a destination, but an ongoing process marked by vigilance and humility. In the end, Luna's unmasking does not destroy lives so much as it strips away illusions. Relationships survive or collapse not because of the truth itself, but because of how each person chooses to live with it. In the world of the bold and the beautiful, where reinvention is currency and appearance often masquerades as substance, this storyline cuts deeper than scandal. It reminds us that identity is not what we present, but what we refuse to confront, and that the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves about who deserves a second chance, and who must live forever with the consequences of their past. The bold and the beautiful has always thrived on the idea that fashion is never just fabric, that family is never just blood, and that betrayal rarely announces itself as such when it first occurs. It creeps in disguised as hurt pride, misunderstood intentions, or the desperate need to feel seen. Nowhere is that more apparent than in the storm gathering around Eric Forrester, the patriarch whose name is stitched into every seam of the Forrester legacy. The question that hangs over Los Angeles like a low, heavy cloud is not simply whether Eric has betrayed his family, but whether the family betrayed him first, and whether that distinction even matters once the damage is done. For decades, Eric embodied stability, vision, and continuity. He was the quiet center around which ambition, rivalry, romance, and ego revolved. Yet the very strength that once made him untouchable, his unwavering belief that family and business could coexist, has now become the fault line threatening to split everything apart. Eric's pain did not begin with anger, it began with humiliation. When Ridge Forrester made the unilateral decision to push his father into retirement, it was framed as concern, respect, and the natural passing of the torch. On paper, it looked reasonable, even compassionate. But beneath the surface, the gesture carried a deeper message that Eric could not ignore. His time was over, his relevance expired, his creative voice no longer welcome. The abrupt farewell party, staged without his consent and cloaked in forced smiles, cut deeper than any open insult could have. It was not simply about losing control of Forrester Creations. It was about losing identity. For Eric, designing was never a hobby or a job. It was the language through which he expressed love, authority, and purpose. To take that away was to tell him that the man he had been for nearly 4 decades was no longer needed. The tragedy of this moment lies in how easily it could have been avoided. Ridge likely believed he was protecting the brand, safeguarding his father's legacy, and sparing Eric the indignity of decline. Yet intention does not erase impact. What Eric felt was erasure. In the quiet aftermath of that party, surrounded by memories of collections he had birthed and battles he had fought, Eric was forced to confront a terrifying possibility: that he was still alive, still thinking, still dreaming, but already being treated as a relic. That realization breeds a unique kind of desperation, one that does not always manifest as rage, but as a cold, calculating need to prove one's worth at any cost. It is within that emotional vacuum that the idea of working outside the Forrester umbrella takes root. The rumors that Eric might lend his talent to a rival, or worse, directly undermine Ridge's leadership, have sent shockwaves through the family and the fanbase alike. On the surface, such a move looks like the ultimate betrayal, the founder turning against the house he built, sharpening his genius into a weapon aimed at his own blood. But to understand Eric's mindset, one must look beyond the accusation and examine the psychology of a man who feels stripped of agency. When autonomy is taken, rebellion often follows, not because the rebel wishes to destroy, but because he wishes to exist on his own terms. Complicating this already volatile situation are whispers about Eric's mental health. The suggestion that he may be experiencing early cognitive decline casts a long shadow over every decision he makes. If true, it reframes his actions not as calculated treachery, but as symptoms of fear, confusion, and an urgent need to assert control before it slips away entirely. The cruelty of such a possibility is profound. A man who once commanded boardrooms and runways might now be battling the quiet terror of losing himself, all while those closest to him debate whether he is still capable of knowing what he is doing. In that context, the line between betrayal and self-preservation blurs almost completely. Into this emotional maelstrom steps Katie Spencer, whose involvement has ignited as much controversy as Eric's own choices. Katie's decision to launch her own fashion company was born of independence, ambition, and a desire to step out of the shadows cast by larger-than-life figures. Her long-standing bond with Eric made his support feel natural, even inevitable. Over the years, they have shared mutual respect, quiet understanding, and a trust that transcends corporate alliances. Yet support becomes something far more dangerous when it crosses into competition, especially when that competition directly targets Ridge's domain. The moral ambiguity of Katie's position is impossible to ignore. On one hand, she did not solicit Eric's betrayal, nor did she appear to anticipate the full consequences of his public willingness to align himself with her success. Her surprise mirrored that of the audience, suggesting that she, too, was unprepared for the depth of Eric's defiance. On the other hand, accepting his backing, especially when it positions her brand as a direct threat to Forrester creations, cannot be dismissed as innocent coincidence. Katie stands at the intersection of gratitude and guilt, empowered by Eric's endorsement yet haunted by the knowledge that his support may cost him everything. The fallout from Eric's actions is felt most acutely by Ridge and Brooke Logan, whose reaction is as predictable as it is explosive. Ridge, already burdened by the weight of leadership and the constant pressure to prove himself worthy of his father's legacy, perceives Eric's defiance as a personal and professional betrayal. For a man whose identity is intertwined with control and vision, the idea that his own father would undermine him is almost unbearable. It strikes at the core of his authority and exposes the fragile foundation upon which his confidence rests. Brooke, fiercely loyal to Ridge and deeply invested in the Forrester empire, views Eric's behavior through a more emotional lens. To her, this is not merely a business dispute, it is a fracture in the family that threatens to consume them all. The shock that reverberates through Ridge and Brooke is not just about lost trust. It is about the realization that the family they thought they knew may no longer exist in the same form. Eric's willingness to challenge Ridge publicly forces them to confront uncomfortable truths about how easily respect can turn into resentment, and how quickly love can curdle into rivalry when power dynamics shift. Their anger is fueled by fear, the fear that if Eric can walk away, the entire Forrester legacy might unravel thread by thread. What makes this storyline particularly compelling is that there are no true villains, only wounded people making choices under immense emotional strain. Eric is not plotting out of malice, he is reacting to loss. Ridge is not enforcing authority out of cruelty, he is trying to protect what he believes is best for the brand. Katie is not scheming to destroy the Forresters, she is seizing an opportunity to define herself. Brooke is not blindly loyal, she is defending the stability she has fought so hard to maintain. Each character operates from a place of deeply human motivation, and it is precisely this complexity that elevates the conflict from melodrama to tragedy. As the week unfolds, the question shifts from whether Eric has committed the ultimate betrayal to whether reconciliation is even possible. Can a family survive when its founder feels discarded and its heir feels undermined? Can respect be rebuilt once it has been publicly shattered? The answers are far from clear, and the tension lies in the uncertainty. Eric's next move could cement his legacy as either a misunderstood visionary or a bitter traitor. Ridge's response could either restore balance or deepen the divide. Katie's choices will determine whether she emerges as an empowered entrepreneur or an unwitting catalyst for familial collapse. In the end, the real betrayal may not be a single act, but a series of small failures to listen, to empathize, and to acknowledge the emotional truths beneath strategic decisions. The bold and the beautiful has always understood that the most devastating conflicts are not born from hatred, but from love mishandled. Eric Forrester's crisis is not simply about fashion houses and boardrooms. It is about a man fighting to remain visible in a world that is already preparing to move on without him. Whether his actions will ultimately destroy or redefine the Forrester legacy remains to be seen, but one thing is certain, the shockwaves of this moment will echo far beyond the runway, leaving scars that no couture masterpiece can ever fully conceal.